Hey everyone, this is Juranas. Today we're going to be covering what is a critical build, what is a strength build. This is pretty much going to tell you what you're going to want to do with the various stats you get in Dead Frontier. For instance, right now there's strength, there's critical, reloading, accuracy, endurance, and agility. A lot of players that are just starting out want to know which should I put points into. One of your first instincts is going to be to spread stuff out. Like you're going to want to put like some in strength, and then you'll think, oh, I need some in agility and endurance. Let's do some accuracy, reloading, and ooh, critical build. That looks important. Critical hit, that is. But that's a bad idea. There are specific proficiencies you need to train in various areas depending upon your weapon set. So let's take a look at some of them. Alright, first we'll start with my personal favorite, the critical build. Critical builds employ a wide variety of weapons and are perhaps one of the pretty much favorite builds for noobs in the game, as they don't really require a lot of money. Um, for example, because the four main weapon types for a critical build are melee, chainsaw, pistol, and rifle. The four types. One of the commonalities is that they all land critical hits very often, hence their use in the critical build. The other being that they are all very ammo efficient. Melee and chainsaw, there's no cost for ammo at all. Pistols, ammo is extremely cheap, and rifles fire at a fairly slow rate, so they're a little more expensive than pistols, but they're still really cheap compared to other weapons. Now, for a critical builds have a certain sort of playoff. On the one hand, they do have limitations. For instance, melee and chainsaws are going to be pretty much useless at long range. They're only good for point blank hand-to-hand combat. And pistols, rifles, you can't take on a horde with those. You're gonna die if you try. Well, maybe some of the higher end weapons like the so-called Alpha Bowl now for Raging Bolt. Um, but their upside is that they're usually quiet, with the exception of chainsaws. And again, with the exception of chainsaws, they're very useful when there's only a few zombies and you want to take them out low cost without causing undue fussing. So, critical builds basically employ as mainly the stat of critical hit, obviously. Depending upon your weapon of choice, for example, for pistols and rifles, you'll need accuracy training, quite a bit of it. Not as much reloading training as you expect. Reloading is always good, as usual, and if you're going to be tackling high aggro conditions, for instance with a pistol, you'll want instant reload, which I'll discuss later under strength builds. But pretty much for the most part, everything should go into crit. Alright, when in doubt, put it into critical. 100 critical is very good. Um, Now, critical builds also use submachine guns. And submachine guns and chainsaws are pretty much a critical build solution to high aggro combat. Now, submachine guns do require instant reloading if you plan on surviving very long with them, so they do take a lot more stat points. Conversely, chainsaws do require some strength, like the grinder requires 50. Um, but pretty much, they're useful in high aggro, which is very good because most of the other weapons, like for instance the katana or the Venturas, they're pretty much useless then. So let's take a look at a few examples. Alright, here we start with a few prime examples, and modestly enough, the first example would be my own account. Now, I do have an amputator, just ignore that. The point is, see here for instance I have machine guns and pistols, low aggro and a high aggro combat weapon, non-respectively. Notice how I've maxed out critical hit, and because it was a submachine gun, the K50M that I went with, I ended up maxing out reloading as much as I could as well. Now, then you'll see, for instance, put some attention accuracy and split the rest between endurance and agility. Now, for submachine guns, you do have to put 5 points of training into strength, but that's it. Pretty much, it's not that strength intensive. Alright, next up we have Ruin's Tribute, and I hope he doesn't, he or the other person don't mind me using him in this film. Here's another person who went with the K50 on the Alpha Bowl, but see, he pretty high critical hit, pretty high reloading. Looks like he decided to pay a lot more attention to agility though, which is kind of important if you intend on looting a lot of stuff. I certainly plan on training my agility next, as much as possible. So, but yeah, he's pretty much a classic example. Then we have PVT Peterson, again, hope he doesn't mind. He looks like he decided to go chainsaw rifle build, or more specifically, melee chainsaw rifle. And as you can see here, he has his critical hit up high. This is actually rather important. If for rifles and chainsaws, if you want the full critical benefit, you need to get up to at least 100. He's got it to 116, which is, in my opinion, a little bit of overkill because both weapons stop receiving any benefit at 100. Any higher than 100 isn't much point. I don't know. Unless he plans on training machine guns, it was kind of pointless for him. But you'll notice that he did have to get his strength up to 50, and see he's trained his agility. Not that much accuracy training. I'm not sure what this guy was thinking, but with the rifle, he's going to want 60 in order to use it for its intended purpose, which is to hit zombies all the way on the other side of the screen. Now, if you switch back for critical training, I'm just going to use my own as an example. You can see all these areas where you can put stat points into. My advice is pretty much generally for a generic critical build, like a critical build that will work with just about any of the critical-based weaponry. You want critical hit maxed out. If you're using any firearms at all, accuracy should be about 60. It's about all you'll need for most of them. And then split up the rest between endurance and agility. Unless you're using a submachine gun, don't worry too much about reloading. Pretty much because all of their weapons are designed to function in low aggro. Once you're in high aggro, pretty much the shit's hit the fan already, and you're pretty much doomed. But yeah, so you basically want to max out critical and then put the rest into endurance and agility. The vast majority of critical based weapons, pretty much the K-50, like for instance the submachine guns and melee chainsaws, and then to a little bit of extent the pistols, they all require you to be pretty close to your target, so you're going to want high endurance. And then agility is always good.